Law Murray from The Athletic, New York Times, and we should mention Pablo Torre Finds Out, also part of a partnership with The Athletic as well. Law, welcome to Basketball Illuminati. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thank you for having me. I hope that doesn't mean I have to keep one eye open at all times.
Gotta keep a third eye open.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the one.
Yeah. We're keeping our third eye open throughout this story on Kawhi Leonard, aspiration, Steve Ballmer. I remember a couple weeks ago, Amin told me, hey, Tom, I recorded something for Pablo's show. I can't tell you about it, but it's going to change the NBA. And I didn't realize until Wednesday morning. So our episode of Illuminati came out last Wednesday, right? So we recorded it without knowing the kind of fallout or the kind of reverberations this story would cause. Law, from your perspective, this story dropped on your doorstep on Wednesday morning. You had no idea that this was going to change your life.
I had a little bit of an idea, a little bit of a heads up. Again, the podcast is now part of the Athletic Network. So, I was chilling, getting over COVID Tuesday, and I got a little heads up, and I was like, I'm going to play basketball. Let me get my sleep now after playing terrible. And I woke up 2:00 in the morning, Wednesday, local time in Los Angeles. And I took this in, and let me tell you, it is really comforting and warm to just be in the middle of a space where you're watching this podcast that, when the East Coast wakes up, it's just going to be like, I'm not going to hear the end of it. I mean, because that's what I did. I was able to watch it in silence and space and complete darkness, not a single light on outside of my screen. And I was just like, I'm going to be in a group chat at 4:00 in the morning.
It's kind of like a nuclear bomb, right? You see a big flash and the mushroom cloud, and then after a little bit, you hear the sound. And so you got to see the flash and kind of like the mushroom cloud start, and then the sound hit around 8 a.m. East Coast time. When everyone
like
kind
terrorism.
Yeah.
It reminds me of, we're literally describing what terrorism feels like.
I was going to go the other way with Luka Doncic trade when it happened at like midnight Eastern, and all the people that were West Coast time saw the news and were freaking out.
And that was in a weekend. That happened on a Saturday night.
On a Saturday
and it was
night,
like,
I remember.
you got to see all the people who weren't responding to it, but you knew would really care about it. And you could wait until they woke up the next morning, East Coast time, and their mind was blown. This story, I think, is up there with the Luka Doncic trade, with any NBA story that we've gotten in 21st century. Amin wasn't overstating things when he said this is going to change the NBA. We're right now recording this on a Tuesday afternoon, and Law, as of now, it appears that the Board of Governors meeting is going to happen, and there's going to be a press conference with Adam Silver on Wednesday. What, Law, are you most interested to hear from Adam Silver as he addresses this bombshell story from Pablo Torre Finds Out?
Yeah, I just want to know when he plans on this all being over. That's honestly, to God, like all I care about. The investigation, we already know that it's starting. Like, Adam's not going to tell us anything there. Is Adam Silver going to tell us that other owners are interested or aggrieved or annoyed? I'm sure he might say that. I'd be surprised if that wasn't the case. In other words, that's not going to be groundbreaking. Like, unless Adam Silver wants to tell us that the investigation was over at the conclusion of the Board of Governors meeting, I don't really know what Adam can say that can move me. Anything will sound like an empty threat. Like, I want to know when the investigation is over, what their conclusions are, what the penalties are, and then we're going to restart the scandal, because there's no possible penalty that is going to satisfy everybody after this thing came out last week.
Yeah, if I could, guys, I have a copy of the collective bargaining agreement in front of me here. I'd like to read a couple of excerpts.
You print that out too?
We got to kill some more trees.
I mean, those 3,000 pages, what did you think was in them? Come on.
So this is Article 13 of the collective bargaining agreement, aptly named Circumvention. In Section 1, Part B, it shall constitute a violation of Section 1A above, which is talking about what is appropriate compensation, for a team or a team affiliate to enter an agreement or understanding with any sponsor or business partner or third party under which such sponsor / business partner / third party pays or agrees to pay compensation for basketball services, even if such compensation is ostensibly designated as being for non-basketball services, to a player under contract to the team. Such an agreement with a sponsor or business partner or third party may be inferred where such compensation from the sponsor or business partner or third party is substantially in excess of the fair market value of any services to be rendered by the player for such sponsor or business partner or third party.
I like the direct or circumstantial evidence. I think that one is a fun one. As far as legalese can be fun and exciting.
That excerpt, combined with the part circumvention may be proven by direct or circumstantial evidence, including, but not limited to, evidence that a player contract or any term or provision thereof cannot rationally be explained in the absence of cap circumvention. Any contract by a team or team sponsor can be deemed a violation if it is substantially in excess of the fair market value of any services to be rendered by the player. Law, as I read those excerpts, I'm trying to figure out any reasonable way the Clippers can have an argument that lets them get away scot-free.
Yeah, I don't really see it other than the NBA saying that they can't prove that the Clippers didn't know about this specific agreement or that they didn't sponsor it or whatever. And I think that's the biggest thing that the NBA is going to have to speak on when they make their conclusions based off of the investigation that they have. Like, what can you connect the Clippers and the organization and the basketball operations to this endorsement deal that I would say Kawhi, Uncle Dennis, they made sure this happened with Aspiration. I know the Clippers introduced Aspiration to Kawhi. Now it's just a matter of tying the basketball operations and the business operations of the Clippers to this specific contract that was signed by Kawhi and Aspiration. That's going to be the trickiest part. Is that's for everybody involved.
Who is Dennis Robertson, Law, and how can the audience understand him best based on your interactions with him or with the Clippers in this story and outside of this story?
Yeah, Dennis is Kawhi's uncle and kind of like a father figure to Kawhi. Kawhi lost his father at an early age, and Dennis has been consistent in Kawhi's life and consistent in his business advisory of Kawhi. That's been the case for as long as I've known Kawhi, and really people were introduced to Uncle Dennis at the tail end of Kawhi's tenure with the San Antonio Spurs, the franchise that drafted Kawhi, or at least acquired Kawhi's draft rights. Shout out to the Indiana Pacers. So
shouts to due diligence, man. That was great due diligence. That was great.
Right. Y'all not going to get me with semantics. I think I described this with Amin over the weekend. I think the Clippers learned from the Spurs. There wasn't much to learn from Toronto. He was only there for a year. Toronto did everything they could. Toronto got the benefits of a contract year and the consequences of a contract year player. He left in free agency. The Clippers have never compromised their relationship with Kawhi, and Uncle Dennis has been a big part of that. Cool. Like, Uncle Dennis has been a consistent presence around the Clippers during games, road trips, what have you. So Uncle Dennis is not like this mysterious figure. Like, we're not using the term colloquially. Like, that's his actual uncle. That's, he's a solid dude. But his mission is simple: maximize Kawhi's earning opportunities, and that has been a theme for a very long time now. Where it's 2025, this first started coming up in the 2010s. That's who Uncle Dennis is.
Clearly, a star player getting star treatment isn't anything new. This happens all the time in the NBA. But I'm curious, how would you compare Kawhi Leonard's star treatment versus other stars who have been Clippers under Steve Ballmer? So whether that's Blake Griffin, Chris Paul, Paul George, James Harden, how you've been around a long time, Law. How would you compare his experience with theirs?
Well, there are stars, and the Clippers have prioritized treating their stars well. I think the worst thing they ever did to a star was trade Blake Griffin after paying him, trading him to Detroit after Blake thought he'd finish his career probably with the LA Clippers. And I think the Clippers learned from that, how they did it, how they talked to not just the player that got traded in Blake, but their entire team. Like, they've done a lot of things where they've learned how to treat their players as well as they possibly could. The Clippers want their stars to feel great while they're there, and even while they're about to leave, they want to treat them with respect. Like with Paul George, they wrote a whole letter explaining, hey, this is why we're losing Paul George in the way that we're losing him, and we're going to miss him. They pointed out that he made all of one All-NBA team in his entire time there. But there's that, and then there's Kawhi. And like I said, this franchise has been willing to get fined, to make things incredibly uncomfortable for everybody else, to make sure Kawhi is placated. That has been the difference. We're not talking about Paul George's deal with aspiration here. I don't know if Paul even had the opportunity to have an endorsement deal like this, or if he got introduced to the sponsor. He was at the groundbreaking. There's Kawhi, there's the other stars, and then there's the other players. The Clippers have prioritized under Steve Ballmer to be as player friendly as possible, especially as star friendly. And in a weird way, this is another highlight, if you will, of come to the Clippers and we will shield you from the media. We will, if you need to take a game to get yourself right, or a season to get yourself right. Like, if you need your people in the building, your family, your friends, your whoever, they will prioritize that and deal with whatever fallout there is to deal with.
Yeah. Yeah. It's important, I think, for the audience and Law, you know this better than anybody, to understand that this is not out of nowhere. The Clippers have dealt with a lot, like you said, a lot of controversy regarding Kawhi Leonard and Uncle Dennis. I'm going to go back to May of 2014 when Steve Ballmer agrees to buy the Clippers from Shelley Sterling for $2 billion. So that's May of 2014. A year later, DeAndre Jordan was the subject of an investigation with the NBA. I should say the NBA was investigating Steve Ballmer and the Clippers. Some improper benefits, circumventing the cap regarding DeAndre Jordan's signing, the dalliance that he had with Mark Cuban, and it came up in the Pablo Torre Finds Out interview with Mark Cuban last week, is that DeAndre Jordan, in one of the meetings reported by the LA Times, was offered what looked like to be a $200,000 endorsement deal with a Lexus dealership that Steve Ballmer and the team had basically put on the table to try to attract DeAndre Jordan to re-sign with the Clippers. The NBA ultimately found that there was wrongdoing, enough evidence to give them a $250,000 fine. Steve Ballmer, he apologized, said it was an inadvertent cap circumvention to the extent that it was cap circumvention. So right away, first year, big free agent, cap circumvention infraction. And then in May of 2019, Doc Rivers was fined $50,000 for comments that he made regarding Kawhi Leonard ahead of Kawhi Leonard's free agency in the summer of 2019. Kawhi Leonard signs with the Clippers. And then in December 2020, the NBA opened up an investigation, brought to light by Johnny Wilkes. Johnny Wilkes was a longtime confidant, friend of Uncle Dennis, who was suing the Clippers because he had purported and alleged a $2.5 million promise from, of all people, Jerry West, in order to bring home Kawhi Leonard to the Los Angeles Clippers. Johnny Wilkes, longtime confidant again with Uncle Dennis, had basically said, I set up a lot of meetings with the Clippers and I had, the Kawhi Leonard's ear on this. And the NBA ultimately did not find any wrongdoing or any evidence of wrongdoing there, cleared them of the investigation, and the lawsuit was dismissed in August of 22. Okay, another incident. Last year, October of 2024, Randy Shelton, the former Clippers strength and conditioning coach, sued the Clippers. Longtime trainer and strength coach with Kawhi Leonard dating back to his San Diego State days. Randy Shelton sued the Clippers for wrongful termination and had a lot of allegations in his lawsuit. And as far as I can tell, that lawsuit is ongoing. I don't believe that there has been resolution on that. So this isn't the first time that Kawhi Leonard has been the center of some controversies regarding Uncle Dennis and the Clippers and all the dealings. Law, which one of those, the DeAndre Jordan one, the Jerry West, Johnny Wilkes one, the Doc Rivers and the Kawhi Leonard recruitment one, the Randy Shelton one, which one of those do you think has the most relevance or most interesting ripple effects with what we're talking about today?
It's got to be the one from 10 years ago, because that's one that resulted in penalties for the Clippers. We had a hell of a time with Emojigate. But the Clippers were fined, I think, $250,000 by the NBA for how they negotiated and got DeAndre Jordan back. And that obviously everyone's going to look at any fine that the Clippers get, and they're going to say that Steve Ballmer is, the axe ranked richest man in the world or whatever, and how it's not going to affect him. Any draft picks that the Clippers lose, it's like they don't have draft picks anyway. What draft picks? And when they use them, people don't, even their own fans, roll their eyes at the guys that they use them on. Like, they're either guys that they like and they don't play, or guys that they don't like and they don't get proven wrong. So, that was 10 years ago, but that was also Steve Ballmer wrote to the fans, to his staff, accepting the penalty and saying we're not going to be in something like this going forward. And here we are 10 years later, and they're in something like this going forward. So all of those other things, though, are relevant because they're not isolated incidents. I was speaking, I've done a lot of these, but I was mentioning that I wonder how much being annoyed comes into play when it comes to the Clippers. We do this with other players, we just call it having a history, right. Guys get suspended more likely if they have a trend of incidents. Your fines escalate when you have a history of the NBA needing to sit you down at their headquarters and ask you questions related to what the heck were you thinking in this moment. And so, the Clippers, being a team that has been investigated before, has been fined before, Kawhi and his uncle, both in things involving the Clippers and other franchises, this being a thing before, all of that is going to come into play. I'm sure Adam Silver, this makes his decision a lot more you have to take all of that into account, because this isn't we're going to let them off because they've never been in this before. Maybe they made some honest mistakes. It's there's some patterns here, and the patterns mean it's going to influence the conclusion of what the punishments and penalties are. But like I said earlier here, I can't see a scenario where the punishment, whatever they decide, is going to be satisfactory for people who want, quote unquote, the integrity of the game maintained.
What would that look like? What would a punishment that would uphold the integrity of the game entail? Because they don't have future draft picks, right? They have 30, 31, and 32 that they own unimpacted by swaps or anything like that.
Do those years even exist? Are we going to see the 2030s in our...
It's Steve Ballmer, the richest owner. A fine would have to be so outlandish to
there's no fine
actually impact him.
This was one of the I love doing this little math game that someone who's worth $150 billion a $7 million fine, which is right around the cap of where in the CBA, a $7 million fine to Steve Ballmer is the equivalent of someone worth $1 million being fined $50. $50.
Hey, that $7 million is also what Aspiration still owes Kawhi after they filed for bankruptcy.
So is there anything that you can think of that would make an impact and satisfy these bloodthirsty justice hounds?
The only thing that would satisfy people, and this is assuming that the NBA has reached the conclusion that the Clippers, without a shadow of doubt, based off the people they talked to, that the Clippers broke the rules and need to be penalized. The only thing that would satisfy people fully is something that harms their free agency standing in the future years. That's it. And that's not even something that happened with the Minnesota Timberwolves in 2000 with the Joe Smith thing. Look, in 2000, and that's the thing that people have correlated this the most to as far as possible penalties. It resulted in the owner not being able to be around the team for a year. I don't think Timberwolves fans really complained about that. The general manager not being around for a year. General manager not having first round picks at their disposal. And they actually appealed and got some of those picks back.
Yeah, two reinstated.
2 of them.
Yep.
And then Joe Smith wasn't allowed to be on the team, contract voided. Shout out to LaFonso Ellis, because LaFonso Ellis, people don't know, he saved that team, being there, playing a good role that Joe Smith basically played. And then LaFonso moves on after that year. And Joe Smith loved these dudes so much that he came back and signed a contract again with these dudes.
Yep.
After being in the wilderness with the Pistons for a year. Like I mentioned to Amin over the weekend, Kawhi Leonard not playing games is something that has been part of the experience here. Like, if you're telling the Clippers they can't have 34-year-old Kawhi Leonard under contract, that expedites their ability to plan their future. That's what they're trying to do anyway. So
I remember, Law, when I was reporting this, I was like, hey, they might void the contract. And some people on social media were like, good. The Clippers fans are like, I actually don't think that's a huge penalty. Get his money off the books and then move on from the Kawhi era.
So it's funny because, you guys were asking, well, is there any way you could impact their free agency? The collective bargaining agreement has very specific guidelines for punishment of this. There's a $7.5 million fine that Tom alluded to. There's the forfeiture of draft picks. And then there is when both the player and the team are found to have committed such violation, void any contract or any renegotiation, extension, or amendment of a player contract between the player and the team, impose a fine of up to $350,000 on any player, which shall be payable to the NBA and NBA's PA selected charitable organization, and or C, prohibit any future player contract or any renegotiation, extension, or amendment of a player contract between each such player and team. So basically, the Joe Smith punishment wasn't the worst, because the worst would have been, and Joe Smith can never play here again. And for whatever reason, David Stern stopped short of that. But in this case, for the Clippers, I think there is a level. I know the jokes are, oh, man, get this money off the books. But at best case scenario is, okay, you got the money off the books. But now you're talking about this guy becomes a free agent and he goes somewhere else. And that could be potentially very devastating depending on his appetite of playing for less than market value for a year.
Yeah, and it will be interesting to see. I mean, you see the only team with cap space is Brooklyn, and I don't even think Brooklyn has any. I mean, I'm sure they can create roster spots, but I don't think that Kawhi fits the Brooklyn Nets timeline. We would be talking about, okay, who wants to sell out to get Kawhi? Does Kawhi even want to play? That would be another question. I think it's reasonable to expect that he would, but it's also in the realm of possibilities that if because with Joe Smith, I remember Joe Smith didn't have to, play somewhere else. He could have just not played at all for a year. When you're in your 20s and you've got a year to make something, it's like, yeah, I'll take the 1 year from Detroit. And then he wound up coming back to Minnesota. So with Kawhi, it's like, what would he choose to do? Because having a Kawhi on your team, and this is why Kawhi's trade value ain't like it is for other players with his production and ability. It's like, well, you mentioned the lawsuit last year, with Randy Shelton. To have Kawhi on your team is a massive undertaking. It means you have to know how to treat him. You have to know how to obviously not just have him on your team, but what players, what system, all that. The right guys. Like Kawhi's not a problem child or anything like that, but like there's a consideration of having a player
high
like
maintenance
that on your team. It can be. You can. I think all stars are to some degree a level of high maintenance. That's why. So having a Joe Smith on your team for a year, late in camp, that's one thing. Kawhi, right. Completely different consideration. That's why you get these great players. We just inducted Carmelo Anthony into the Hall of Fame. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Carmelo Anthony, you would think, man, of course, Carmelo Anthony's out there. Like the Rockets or the Atlanta Hawks, I guess, technically, let him go. Like have him on your team. It's like, dude, there's dudes writing think pieces trying to decide whether Carmelo Anthony should continue his basketball career or not. That's really a similar situation here. I mean, Kawhi is a better player, but has even more considerations as far as like having that guy on your team.
I guess when I say he's high maintenance, how would you? I'm trying to compare him against the context of others, all-stars, other high maintenance people. Would you classify him as high maintenance compared to his peers?
It's so tough. Like, cause as a basketball player, he makes so many guys better. Like that's the irony in all this. Like Kawhi is worth all this problems. Like the threshold is getting to the point where you're questioning it, but it's like when that dude's on the floor, he makes everyone better. He makes the coach better. He makes the other stars better. He knows where he's supposed to be. He's going to take the best shots every time. He's not going to turn the ball over. He's willing to do this. He plays hard. He does all of those things. And it's like you're asking your role players to do that. Your star doing that is just another level of exemplary leadership. Like that's what you'll go through all that crap just for a player like him. In terms of that, Kawhi's not high maintenance at all. But in terms of like getting that dude ready to play and playing consistently and then having to deal with all the outside noise of who's annoyed because somebody wasn't made available. That's the high maintenance part. That's the tough part. It's like, you got to take care of this guy and you got to make sure he is, again, placated. That's the difficulties. Kawhi's not a bad dude. And Kawhi's not a guy who doesn't communicate, doesn't talk, doesn't interact with the people that he needs to interact with the very most, the coach, his co-stars, his teammates. People enjoy being around Kawhi. But these are the things when you're about to start camp in 3 weeks and you're like, okay, what's going to happen here and how is it going to affect our basketball operation?
Steve Ballmer, if he was suspended for a year like Glenn Taylor was in the Joe Smith case, how do you think he reacts to that?
I think it would be something he pushes back on. I think it would be even more embarrassing for him than how embarrassing this is for him now. Like he's already admitted to the fact that he got scammed and he shouldn't have been involved to this level with this company in the first place. Intuit Dome, the thing that he is probably going to be his biggest accomplishment, as an owner in the NBA. It's one of his biggest, no doubt, is going to be featured during All-Star Weekend, the biggest weekend the NBA has, in my opinion, outside of the NBA Finals. And to not be able to be around the team in the building for that would be just a huge loss. Like you want to at least be present to showcase this with that kind of spotlight. It would be a lot more significant than Glenn Taylor not being around the Timberwolves in 2001. Let's just say that.
I asked that because when you talk about the picks, they don't use the picks for their own guys, but picks are currency. Picks are assets that you could put into a deal, not unlike how they got Paul George. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and a boatload of picks is how they got Paul George, which is how they got Kawhi Leonard. So in that sense, as a currency, draft picks could be valuable for acquiring another star. So I do think there's some argument to be made that draft picks, while they don't use it on their own players and they don't develop quite as well as other teams might with their draft picks, I think it would hurt the Clippers in terms of roster building going forward and star chasing going forward.
And it would absolutely hurt them. It's just the fact that they don't control so many of their first round picks until so far out into the future. James Harden is on this team now. Not only did it cost a first round pick to get James Harden, but I mean, tampering charges involving the Sixers, involving James Harden, and how the Sixers tried to, James Harden took less, right? Sacrificed his earning potential so that those dudes could sign guys like PJ Tucker and Daniel House, of all people. Like, ironically, James is on this team now. You know what I mean? Like, yes, the pick part is currency. It's just the fact that the picks that you could take away to penalize Clippers are so far into the future that this fan base is already incredibly apathetic about this era of basketball, what it took to maintain it, because Balmer will never tank, that kind of thing. This team prides itself on the winning seasons they've had. Every single team in the league has had a losing season since the last time the Clippers have had one. Balmer's never experienced a losing season. He's had 2 years where the Clippers didn't make the playoffs, but the Clippers won 42 games in each of those seasons. That's what I mean. It's like, yeah, look, the penalties, if you don't get Kawhi on your team, that hurts. If you get fined, if you get embarrassed, that thing hurts. But it's like, when it comes to being in the middle of December and having to win day to day, I wonder what this looks like for the Clippers. I wonder what this looks like for, guys like Balmer who people I'm sure go to the games and watch Balmer get excited. They don't go to the games for most owners like that. They do for Balmer, but it's like, for the most part, we don't go and watch the owner. We don't go and watch the front office. We barely go and watch the coach. National broadcast rights. It's like, make sure you get this close up on JJ Redick. It's like, that's the case. That's the entertainment value for some people. For the most part, it's like, when they're playing in the middle of the season, what's that going to mean? You know what I mean? And that is something the NBA is going to have to speak on.
Law, there's something happening in the middle of the season that's very important to the Clippers specifically, and that's hosting the All-Star game.
Right.
What impact do you think this investigation is going to have on that and on Steve Ballmer? Like, how harsh of a penalty would it be for him to not be allowed to participate in that, regardless of whether the investigation is wrapped up or not by then?
Man, if it's not wrapped up by then, that would be crazy, because that would mean months of this hanging over every single broadcast in the NBA until that point of the season. Like that's crazy. I really feel like there's an incentive that the NBA is going to have to wrap this up as soon as possible, just so you can talk about the conclusions, not this is ongoing, by the way, as Bradley Beal tries to make a layup or something. You know what I mean? So I don't think the league is going to do something crazy like take the All-Star game out of LA. I don't think that's necessary. I think that impacts people that go beyond the operation of the Clippers. I don't think that's going to happen. It's going to be a bad look. All of this is bad look. Like, the arena is supposed to help sell the Clippers as a viable destination franchise, if you will. Like, that's what this is going to be about. That's why I keep saying when the conclusions happen, who gets to be around the team, what the penalties are, whatever, the Clippers' priority, they're the number one priority. They're going to say, yeah, we're trying to win a championship with the guys that they have currently, but they are the oldest team in basketball. Tom, I think you did a big thing on that last month, right? Like, they are invested in who is going to lead this franchise post Kawhi, post James Harden. Trust me, Intuit Dome is going to be big on that, because those dudes are all going to come in there and they're going to be like, wow, what a building, what an atmosphere. This could literally be where I just play all my home games. That's a big part of All-Star Weekend, and big part of Balmer being there to be like, this is my building.
I was talking to a GM late last week when the news dropped, and he expected one or two things to happen from the league office on this. One, nothing, no punishment. They didn't find any evidence of wrongdoing here. as much as bad as it looks, there isn't that quote unquote smoking gun. And the GM who talked to me about this said, the NBA only has so much power to investigate this. Yes, they might get team communication, internal emails, cell phones, but they don't have subpoena power. And it'll be interesting to see what kind of distance and depth do they go to find everything that they can find in this investigation. The second scenario is they drop the hammer. It's one or two things this GM was confident in saying. It's not going to be like, a pick, 2 first-round picks, or a $5 million fine. It's one or the other, because I don't think you're going to be able to satiate anybody with a half measure. Like, it's going to have to go all the way, or it's going to have to be scot-free. And the way it was portrayed to me was like, which one is it going to be? And the other owners, the other executives, the other players, they're all looking to see, like, are they really going to do a half penalty? Is like a couple first round picks and a $5 million fine? Because I just don't think that there's any way you can go in the middle on this. Like, that, it feels like it's going to have to be the whole shebang or zilch.
Adam Silver says, challenge accepted.
Yeah.
I'll find the middle.
I don't know.
Look, the irony in all of this is Adam Silver's first big decision as commissioner was saying ban for life. And he did it with the number 4 and life spelled with a Y when he got Donald Sterling out of there. That was his. He wasn't even the commissioner of the NBA to begin that season, I don't think. Right?
Yeah.
Like,
that was his first act. It was like 2 weeks in.
Exactly. So does Adam Silver feel like he needs that moment for, to meet this? Does Adam Silver need to make people forget about 2000 because of what happened here? And I think the difference is just that this is the LA Clippers and Steve Ballmer. I mean, and you bring up the other owners and the board of governors, they're gonna talk and be like, yeah, we want this taken seriously. But they don't want the smoke either, because I mean, Pablo started this investigation with one particular NBA franchise, and we know damn well them other franchises, they got their own issues. That's one reason. I mean, I remember Mark Cuban back in 2014 mentioned the slippery slope when it came to Donald Sterling's tapes. And people who are familiar with the Dallas Mavericks over the rest of the 2010s know that there have been some things happening in that organization that required some scrutiny, right? I don't think that, I mean, Steve Ballmer, you try and penalize him, and if there's some kind of appeal process, it gets really nasty for the NBA, even going forward, beyond the Clippers. So my question would be, does the NBA want to throw the book at the Clippers, try and make an example of them, and then the example turns into this whole spilling out of everybody else's mess? The NBA might decide it's easier to just, say, basically carry on with barking and not really doing anything to bite.
Law, let me ask you this. From the outside looking in, I think for most basketball fans, Steve Ballmer is known to be two things. One, rich beyond belief, but also two, a little bit of a goofball. A little bit of a... So what is Steve Ballmer like up close and specifically as a businessman or as a competitor in this space?
Yeah, I think he enjoys being in basketball. I think he enjoys all the people that he gets to be around, the fans included. I think he has a joy to him that doesn't get shown by other owners, but also he's very serious about his bottom line and what he's trying to do. He is like, and I think, that part doesn't get seen all the time. Like, that goes back to Microsoft. Right. Like, that guy is, when he felt like he needed to shake things up, things got shaken up. And people don't see that as much with the basketball operation with the Clippers, because the only GM he's ever had to demote, and the only coach he's ever had to fire, was the same guy both times, Doc Rivers. And that dude was on the Daily Show with Doc Rivers months, not even months, weeks before firing him for blowing his second 3-1 lead. Like Steve Ballmer, though, is like, he's very competitive. He's in this situation now because he's trying to win at all costs. And so, yeah, he has this persona where he's got this high energy, but also that guy is like trying to get over and trying to win. He's trying to do it fairly, but also he's trying to do it in a way where it's like, in business, you don't get to be that on that level of wealth without getting over, when you have opportunities to get over. Like that's who Steve Ballmer is. Like, Steve Ballmer is a great dude, especially for a person with the kind of wealth that he has. My experience with him personally has been great. Like, it's been a privilege to be around him and to know him as well as I do. But I think a lot of people, they look at him maybe as a cartoon, and that's the wrong thing to do. That guy's he's very serious about everything that he's a part of. Very serious.
All right. Well, thanks for joining Basketball Illuminati. This is, I think it's important for people to understand the context of not just Steve Ballmer, but also Dennis Robertson and the whole experience and what's possible in this scenario. So thanks for keeping your third eye open on this. And this story is far from over, Law. And so I'm glad you got that rest in before that 2 a.m. wake up call.
Oh yeah, we gonna be balanced in all things. So thank you for having me, guys.